Hello and welcome to Minter Dialogue, episode number 496. My name is Minter Dial and I'm your host for this podcast, a proud member of the Evergreen Podcast Network. For more information or to check out other shows on the Evergreen Network, please go and visit evergreenpodcast.com. So this week's interview is with John Andrews. John is a career shopper marketer, entrepreneur and intrapreneur, having worked for the likes of Newell Rubbermaid, Hanes, and on the retail side, Walmart, where he built Walmart Elevenmoms. He's also founded and exited several startups. He's co-author, along with my friend Ted Rubin, of a book entitled Retail Relevancy: How Brands and Retailers Will Connect in a Post-Physical World. In this interview with John, we discuss his career, the future of retail, who holds the power between brands and retailers, whether brands should own their channel a la Nike or Apple, and solving some of the biggest retail challenges looming. You'll find all the show notes on minterdial.com. Please, if you have a moment, go over and drop in a rating and review. And certainly don't forget to subscribe to catch all the future episodes. Now for the show. John Andrews, friend of Ted Rubin, co-author with Ted, Retail Relevancy, specialist in retail. My goodness, I'm looking forward to chatting with you about the future of retail. In your own words, John, how would you like to describe yourself?
Well, I am a path follower and a path maker. So I have been fortunate enough to follow some pretty cool paths and to make some pretty cool paths. So I'm a path person.
As long as it's not a pathogen or a pathologist.
Had a couple of those, but no, try to stay away.
All right. So, John, you have had an enormous career in retail with so many big name brands and retailers. Talk us through your journey to where you are today.
Sure. The abridged version, which is always nice, is, I was a non-traditional kind of pathway here in the States anyway. I did not go to college out of high school, which most people who are, going to do that typically do. But I worked for a chain called Domino's Pizza, which you may know or may not know.
My son is deeply indebted to you. He loves Domino's Pizza.
Well, Domino's is great, right? Who doesn't love Domino's? I had the opportunity, I was delivering pizza to them when I was in high school and had the opportunity to get into their management training program. And if you went through it and you managed a store for a couple of years, you could invest like $25,000 and you could get a franchise. So I'm like, well, that sounds pretty cool. I'll do that. And I really enjoyed the work. It took me out of I grew up in North Carolina, and it took me away from my small town upbringing to the coast of Maine, where I ran some Domino's. And what I really took away from that experience, though, was we had a binder about this thick that was all of the marketing stuff, right? Because a lot of my pay was based on a bonus. And we used to do all kinds of kind of tactical marketing things, from door hanging to
coupons and
bounce like that we would do on box tops, to joining the local chamber of commerce, to whatever, right? So I really was fascinated. There were a couple pages that really delved into how you angle the logo, right? 23 degree angle, and the colors, process blue is Domino's blue, right? And really focus on like, wow, there is someone's job who is to think about these things, right? And it's a classic brand, architecture, marketing job, right? How do we look consistent? How do we communicate?
The brand charter,
right? And I think at some point I decided, well, I might like to do something other than make pizzas my whole life, although I miss my pizza days greatly. So I returned to college with the intent of getting into the advertising business. And I had a wonderful, student services career coach who said, well, so you want to move to New York and make $25,000 a year and live in an apartment with 8 people. So you can work in a sexy job in Madison Avenue, and get coffee for people. I said, yeah, no, that's not what I want to do at all. She said, well, what do you think about brand management? I'm like, ooh, what's brand management? She said, well, it's this job where you do these things, where you manage all of the things for brand. And you think about how does it brand resonate with people. And I said, oh yeah, I want to do that. She says, well, great, you're going to need a graduate degree. So I went directly to graduate school, got a job. Got a degree, a business degree. And I was at a little school called Wake Forest in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, which was the home of R.J. Reynolds, the tobacco company, and to most of Hanes brands. So if you think about brands like Champion and Hanes and Bally and Legs and whatever. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. So they recruit a lot of people. I went to work for them and found myself working on a food drug mass brand called Legs that was big at places like Walmart. It was actually growing quite rapidly at Walmart. And so I really learned kind of that core, consumer product good manufacturing, brand marketing.
And the relationship with the big old retailer.
Relationship, yeah, because within a month of that job, I was over in Bentonville, Arkansas, working with the buyer on a new program, and so I got to see that piece of it, and I was knee deep in data. I was not a pantyhose user, so I needed to really understand the user. I actually think, I tell people this a lot, and it's not a joke. It's probably the best job I could have ever had was being a brand person for a product that I can't use. Because one of the inherent weaknesses of marketing of any type is the world does not look like you. The world does not act like you. It does not think like you. And too many marketers, I think, including me, get stuck in here's how I do it. So that must be the way we do it. And that's nice. But, data is awesome, especially now when, I've in the one of the many windows I have behind this screen, I've got 3 Google Analytics screens up for brands that I work with and think about. And so I can literally see what somebody's doing on our website right now, right? What are they doing? What pages are they going to, and get information. And man, I just loved it. Got the opportunity to go from there to a digital startup called Picture Vision that was digitizing photos and putting them on the web and making the picture CDs, you might remember. We made a machine that did that. AOL was part of our owner. We were the back end of American Online's You've Got Picture service. So I kind of got some digital chops doing that. And then I went back to a brand and more of a scale up brand. So a brand called M+, or a brand company called M+, that had a bunch of sub brands in the footwear accessory space. And I really learned how to grow new brands, to make brands for specific retail channels. And gosh, I just really loved it, and I was there for about 4 years. We went from about 25 million in revenue to about 100 million in revenue, made some equity money, which was nice as part of that, and learned that was something that I enjoyed, so let's do that more. And then I got recruited by Walmart. So I moved to Bentonville, Arkansas. And I lived in Fayetteville, which is a college town just south of there, and with my wife, and she also got recruited by Walmart because they recruit trailing spouses pretty aggressively, because it's as you can imagine, it wasn't easy at that time to get people to move to the middle of the country.
Sure.
Isolated in a small town. It's actually quite an amazing place today. But I really loved it. And I went to Walmart on the dry grocery team and wanted to I loved that I had the opportunity to work there, but I knew I would get to do something different, right? That there would be all kinds of things I could do. So I just wanted to get there, get in a role. As part of that, you can see the grocery behind me. I was responsible for a team that helped put together a lot of cooperative marketing programs. So you think when you walk into a Walmart or an Asda or whatever, and they have, the Christmas promotion. There's all the stuff. They've got the advertising and everything to go with. That's what our team did. And we would work with our supplier community, the Procter and Gamble's and Kellogg's and Pepsi's of the world, to build collective programs that we would use for media together and in-store activation as well. And it was a great part of retail to learn because it is the promotional part of the 4 Ps, so I kind of knew product a little bit. I knew
Pipeline,
product, place, promotion, and price, right?
Mm-hmm.
So promotion is kind of generic for marketing. But especially in the retail world, a lot of promotion is how are things merchandised in the store? How are things done on temporary displays, which stick out at you? So I really learned that shopper marketing space very well. And then one day had a colleague approach me and say, "Hey, I'd like you to help build this emerging media team I'm working on." I said, "Awesome." This was about 2008. I said, "Awesome. What is emerging media?" I said, "That would be a great place to start." He said, "Well, everything beyond, banner ads, this Facebook thing and this thing called Twitter and, other things." I said, "Awesome." He says, "You know about Twitter and stuff, right?" I'm like, "If you mean that I know that there's this thing called Twitter, then yes, I know all about it." So it was great. We got under the hood of it, and we built as part of that, I began to Google things like saving money on groceries and stuff like that. And Walmart was nowhere to be found, right? Because Walmart did at that time not make content about saving money, right? It made ads about its prices, but what did pop up was lots and lots of content from a lot of influencers. They weren't called influencers then, they were bloggers, and more specifically a genre of bloggers called mom bloggers. And they were creating money about frugal living and couponing and lifestyles. And so I began to reach out to them. I said, "Hey, tell me what you're doing, because Google really likes it, and I really want to understand it." And we formed a group of these folks and built a platform for cooperative media called Walmart Elevenmoms. And we packaged their content into a media buy, and our suppliers bought it.
Here's what I found.
And it was just like you would have done in any other form of cooperative media. It just happened to be using people as media. Now what's thought of as influencer marketing.
And the number 11 was just because you had 11 of them?
We had 11 of them, and then we got 12, and it's like, "Well, do we change our name?" And I said, "No, because I like words that you can index for and own on Google. I think a lot about Google. I think Google kind of controls our life, like it or not. But that's how it is. So use it. Walmart Moms was actually a blogger's name, so we're going to take that. And by the way, that would have meant nothing to anyone, but Elevenmoms kind of, it's a cognitive dissonance. It's like, oh wait, what is that? So that was the genesis behind the name. And actually my boss told me not to name it that. He says, "Name it Walmart Moms." And I'm like, "I'm not going to name it the name of a existing blogger's space, because could be nothing worse for Walmart than to do that and to alienate, all the mom bloggers are just working hard out there, So anyway, we did that. It was wildly successful. That program ran for about 10 years, way past my stewardship of starting it. And we took that model and founded a company called Collective Bias. Oh, and at that time I met a friend of ours that Ted Rubin, who was doing basically the same thing for a scale-up brand called Elf Cosmetics in the cosmetic space.
Which I know.
We began a wonderful blogger that we both work with named Katya Presnell, who we still work with, connected us. We became friends. We began to collaborate on things, and we met each other for the first time at South by Southwest Interactive in Austin, Texas, in the spring of 2008. Fast forward a little bit, we took that model and founded a company called Collective Bias. We had some great people to help us think about how we create. People always thought of us and still think of that company as a influencer marketing company. It was not. It was a media company that produced content using people. That's it.
Which is what influencer marketing is, really, isn't it?
It is, but typically it is not packaged and sold in that manner. It was very important. It was a very important distinction that I used to really say to people. I'm like, we don't work with influencers to bring influencers into your brand. We create integrated campaigns focused primarily on retail, integrated retail with groups of influencers. And we never allowed brands to pick the influencers in their group. We just had a different philosophy that was, I'm selling you a media buy. So if you bought, at that time, print was still pretty, relatively big. But marketers understood media buys. So if they spent $100,000 on a magazine ad in Glamour, they knew what they were getting, right? They were getting content, they were getting reach, they were getting whatever. And they weren't even getting content because their agency would then make their content and they'd charge them another charge for that. So we sold a package media buy that used influencers. And then we supported that content with cross syndication among those influencers. But those influencers were always picked via a hand raising method of people who we would present the opportunity, the mission, or whatever, and they would choose. So it was always something that was relevant for their brand. And I think that was a really important point of difference in the way influencer marketing is primarily done today, is people pick people who they want, they think are whatever. And I'm like, yeah, but if my brand and content is not relevant for their audience, then why would they do it?
Well,
right?
of course, there's still the check. The size of the check can help deviate people's understanding of what actually fits.
Yeah, no, it does. And then now you add on the analytics tools that we have. I get the idea of spending, hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars on influencer content, but I would challenge anyone to show me where those investments actually pay a positive ROAS, right? I knew that when we used 30 influencers to create a collective bias campaign, we created an amount which we always exceeded of reach, of engagement, and some kind of action. So again, we were not just thinking about, yay, we're going to go get you some amazing, well-known YouTuber. That's nice, but I would bet 199 times out of 100, those investments do not pay off, other than brand exposure, which is fine. But I don't see a pathway to make those ROAS investments. And now everything is measurable. So if I run an influencer campaign, I can see the impact that it has on the volume and activity of my brand, not only just from a conversational standpoint, but from a site traffic, sales, and impact standpoint, right?
Can I just break in there?
Yeah, sure.
So the ideas of data, the measurability is so obviously necessary, especially for the larger companies. But it feels like it's a little bit at a countervailing force with the idea of developing relationships and storytelling and trust. Because the former, just data you can tell any story you want with any data. There's an issue of confidentiality in order to get the data.
Sure.
And the way often I think retailers or brands are the bigger ones, they default to data as opposed to the hard work that comes with the messy idea of building relationships. How do you dot those T's and cross those I's?
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you, because I think what has happened is the pendulum has swung so far in the transactional data side that it actually destroys relationships. So, your inbox and text streams are no stranger to brands that are just relentlessly communicating to you. Some brand, I still am amazed when I get brands that email me every day. And I can't imagine that there is not well, the problem is there's not a brand person on that business that is asking the question of, hey, why are we doing this, right? There is a segmented group that is responsible for so much traffic and so much activity that that's what they're graded on. But they're not doing the math of you're really destroying your credibility with a brand. So I'm on site right now at a company called OSnap. OSnap is a scale-up brand. It makes a product, a phone grip product. I don't know if you can see it because of my background. I got to hold it just right.
Don't worry.
It makes a phone grip product that's a competitor to PopSocket. Our team here uses data relentlessly, but also thinks about the customer relentlessly. So they also use data to look at how many times they've communicated with a customer and how much is too much and how much is disrespectful of that customer's time and energy. And then thinking about, what would they like and what would they do from a new brand. So they communicate with the customer when they have new news, when they have brand positioning, things that are, build brand affinity. To your point, help build relationships, but not just to sell shit. And I think that's what you're getting at. Unless I'm wrong, correct me. But yeah, data can be a very bad thing too when I believe used incorrectly. And I think for many cases it could be argued that it is used incorrectly.
Well, Ted Rubin, the man who will talk about return on relationships, it's a messier process. It's harder. If you are strictly looking at the return on investment all the time, it seems like that's bound to cut short the ability to deal with the messiness, build a relationship that might not be worthwhile today, but will bear fruit eventually, but not in a way that you're necessarily expecting, because the person may not be able to buy your items for one reason or another, but they might influence others. And we just don't seem to track that. And to your point in the book about how artificial intelligence is certainly not very intelligent, it seems to be more good in the artificial elements. That's to say, handling mass work and doing if this then that, but not learning enough about John Andrews' particular penchant, and he's happy to receive one email every 7 days, and someone who looks like him but in the same category but has a different behavior set would prefer one email every 2 months.
Sure.
And the ability to splice using AI is difficult.
Yeah, it's coming. Now, I will say, and I teach integrated brand promotion and advertising here at North Carolina State University, and actually have my students this semester writing some of their work using AI writers, because I think that one, they've gotten a lot better. The speed of growth of recursiveness of the systems learning from themselves is pretty amazing right now. And what you just described is happening in the automation side. So it is actually building a more human-like kind of approach to building. To your point, it's not there yet, but I have been pretty amazed over the past. I think COVID must have been a great time for a bunch of developers to just be under the hood and fix things that maybe weren't working.
I had my friend Kevin Ryan on the show talking about, at the time, that guilt.com was around and how they used AI to develop relationships, and they had 2,000 differentiated email segments where each email was done differently. And he talked about how many people that required, but the issue is it requires a specific type of mindset, because when you're developing relationships, it's not just about the numbers,
No, of course.
and leaning in with intuitions and accepting the messinesses of it, and maybe even having feedback and interactions with people, and then the whole issue of data.
Yep.
How can I get you, John Andrews, to supply me with intimate personal data, which helps me really understand what you want
Sure.
to personalize to?
Yeah, no, you're right. And Ted says this a lot. I'm a big believer in this as well, is and I think it's that same thing. It's like you cannot automate relationships. You can't automate all the things. You need to automate the things that give you time, that the things that can be done. Writing is quickly being automated. And I have a lot of writers that are friends of mine who are like, well, this is terrible. And I'm like, yeah, so I get it. I don't think it's terrible though, because I think it gives you more time to think about ideas and bring them to life in ways. You know, we use a couple tools. We use a product called Article Forge that can write a pretty decent article from scratch. And then we human edit, right? We give Article Forge the original ideas, we human edit, and then we use a sister tool called Word.ai. And Word.ai rewrites entire articles for approachability and readability from what it knows people engage with, right? Again, you can't just, what will happen is people will just use the tools and be like, hey, we're pump out articles like crazy. That's not the point. The point is I can become a more productive marketer and spend more time thinking about how do I build those real relationships than cranking out 10 articles that I need for different platforms or different sources, right? And I just think, again, the part of our job is to learn. Ted and I have a wonderful friend named Dave Henry, and Dave Henry has spent 40 years in the retail business. He knows where all the bodies are buried. He knows there, he created the first loyalty program at a chain called Star Markets, which is in Northeast United States, now part of Albertsons. But he and some of his marketing, he was on the marketing team there. They were sitting around, and American Airlines was, kind of doing its thing with its loyalty program. And they're like, we should do that for our customers, right? So they said we should build something that rewards our regular shoppers and thinks about the things that they buy. But they were driving that system, and they worked with a technologist to be able to integrate 10 items that they could offer discounts on, and all you had to do was come in and buy those items, and you had your card, and it interacted. I mean, you think about that back in the the early 80s, that wasn't easy to do. So to your point, it's like thinking about what's important to our customers. How can we show them some empathy and connection in a way using technology, but still be reflective of the kind of relationship we're trying to build with them. But he spoke to my class yesterday, and it was interesting because he showed all these old, circular ads and things. I think a can of tuna was 18 cents, in the first ad that he showed or something. And I could see my students thinking about, well, I mean, they don't read newspapers. They don't, this is foreign to them. And I said, at the end of class, I said, Dave showed a lot of old stuff, right? Old kind of things. But if you'll notice, the things that we've talked about all semester, none of the principles have changed at all, right? It was because he talked about, how do I understand my core customer? How do I understand their wants and needs? How do I understand how I connect with them in a way that is relevant and breaks through the clutter of their, he had really, he and his team used lots of really bad but really kind of funny puns in their ads, right? And it was their but they developed a brand personality that was recognizable and repeatable and consistent. And I thought, wow, this was a really cool juxtaposition to all of the technology and new kind of brands that I have and that are literally trying to do the exact same thing,
Hi, I'm Brendan Slocum. I'm going to tell you how music can save your life, what it can do for you, and what it has done for me and my guests.
It's such a universal language. You can go any place in the world, and I love that.
Hey, if you got soul, you got soul. I don't care what your color is.
I think music needs to be something that helps us to know what we all have in common.
How music can save your life. Find it wherever you listen to podcasts.
So I'd like to get into what the future of retail is. As you and I were just chatting before, it's a very fast-moving space. COVID changed a lot, acceleration, and so on. And you quote Doug McMillon, the Walmart CEO, says, "We will compete with technology, but we will win with people."
Yeah.
And fundamentally, of course, e-commerce is more or less a computer interface, although there is things like chat and customer service and delivery, where usually, unless we get the drones, there's still people involved.
Yeah.
But Great Resignation, motivation to work, to get into a car, commute to the workplace, be a smiley, service-oriented, customer-facing person who's working in an organization where margins are light, where treatment of employees isn't great, where the major purpose of retail doesn't seem to be hugely fulfilling.
Yeah.
How does retail get through that conundrum, given the trends of the employee side of things as opposed to the customer side?
Wow, that's a great question. I'm not sure anyone has that figured out, and it is to your point, it is an amazingly hard problem today, right? Working in a retail job, be it on a store floor or on a warehouse floor, is not something I think many people, not only don't aspire to, but they don't want to do it, right? They don't want to. It's a thankless job. Technology is going to take a lot of those roles. I mean, it just is. And
sure.
In the book we talk about, and that's probably a good thing in many cases, because we talk about what's the goal of retail, right? It's fulfillment of wants and needs, and we get it. I get into some esoteric conversations with people about, stores versus e-com versus, and I said, why are we talking about this? Who cares, right? Like, the idea is, what does the shopper want? What do they need, right? It's not about you. It's not about your store. It's not about your model. It's whatever. It's what does the shopper need, and I think that you're going to see an evolution. E-com, no one makes money in e-com today, including Amazon. I mean, they don't. Amazon is very clear about the fact that it does not make money. Walmart loses, last time I saw the latest numbers, and they're not releasing everything, they lose about $1 billion a year on their e-com business, including pickup, because it's expensive. And to compete for share, retailers signaled to shoppers that it was no cost, but it is a cost. It's roughly, to deliver a bag of groceries to your home, it's about $18 in total cost if you factor in all the cost. Well, most consumers are not going to pay that, but most consumers want that. So, first of all, you're going to have to solve that challenge. And I think technology will do some of that, but I also think there'll be other things. But what you're seeing is an unbundling. Amazon, they had horrible numbers today. I think their stock lost about 20% of its value this morning. They're going after logistics really hard right now. They want to have their own logistics. And I think for two reasons. Amazon makes money from AWS, from media, and everybody's obsessed with retail media. And I'm like, yeah, but Amazon's a search engine for products and you're not. Walmart might have a little search, everyone else there's none. Google has it. They make money from subscriptions and they make money from media, right? From their extended media services like
Prime, Amazon Prime Video.
Yeah, right. So I think it's really looking at logistics as, to your point, how do they keep that connection with the customer, right? Because if UPS or FedEx or USPS or whoever or someone else is delivering your stuff, that's not a great. You have zero connection with the customer. It's even worse. Think about if you're a retailer that's using Instacart in the middle of your purchase. So now Instacart is between you and the customer. I believe the future of a retailer is going to be an entity that fulfills your wants and needs wherever and whenever you want them. And I think it's a fundamental change when we think about this thing behind me. It's a store shelf.
Retail shelf, yeah.
A retail shelf. But it's going to be a retail shelf for plenty of people for many years to come. But think about the rise of direct to consumer brands, and a lot of them get that industry gets a lot of shade right now, because I think people don't fundamentally understand that. Yes, there are a bunch of consumer brands, direct to consumer brands that are struggling. Warby Parker and has never made a profit. Allbirds, all these guys. Well, but they're struggling because they were misallocated in size from the beginning, and they got too much investment and needed to pay that investment back. Versus thinking about how big is a glasses, a direct to consumer glasses brand. How big is an ugly shoe? Sorry, Allbirds, but your shoes are ugly. Super comfortable. How big are these brands? Well, they misallocated size investment, and that'll work us out. But there are plenty of brands of what's wrong with $100 million brand? What's wrong with a $500 million brand? There's plenty of brands that can be that size and have this personal relationship with their customer, or become a bigger part of a portfolio of brands like that. Retailers, I think some big retailers are going to survive. I think most others do not, simply because the economics are not going to support it. And I think other people become retailers that are now mainly seen as brands. Nike is a retailer. Nike now sells more than 50% of its total volume direct to consumer. It has reduced its reliance on other retailers. It's going to stop selling to Foot Locker, I think, by the end of the year or next year. It's only got 3 or 4 people not named Nike that are, and I think that's the future of some brands. And then I think the aggregate is going to be, in the United States, it's going to be Walmart, and I think Target will get subsumed at some point, and Amazon. And then I think, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to break in on the Amazon story. So my perspective on them is that they're not making a profit because they can not make a profit on retail, on e-commerce, because that's what they've chosen to do. They have enough margin elsewhere that they can subsidize the situation in e-commerce until they become so big that then there's the only player around. And then I'm sure that, especially once Bezos has to retire or his shares are sold, then we're back to the strict Wall Street approach, where we're going to be looking for money and where's your margin, and people here have to drive up margins. But in the case of getting bigger and the ones in the middle getting squeezed out, we still haven't solved the people problem that Macmillan talks about, because just because you're bigger doesn't sound like it's going to make you better people.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, Walmart lives in a unique position because it also has the scale to be able to make some other choices. it's got pricing power, probably even better than Amazon's. Although I think that's going away. But its strength, if it looks at its competition, is it has lots of humans that can interact with other humans in its stores, and eventually as potential its own delivery platform. I think technology is going to take a lot of people out of the process in the near term, mainly because it has to now. It was able to at some place before. If you think about self-check and some other technologies that were coming up, you're just not going to have not in the United States anyway. Until we do something about immigration, we're not going to have people to fill the roles, and that's just a reality that I think the entire industry, and it's not the only one too. The other part is
hospitality.
Yeah, it is. You got a lot of competition for those roles. So if all of a sudden, McDonald's is paying $20 an hour, that's a competitor for somebody that was in your role. I do think though, that those two competitions will be interesting, but I believe I tell this story to Ted a lot. I said, you know what? So, Amazon was in .com one, right? So you remember pets.com and blah, blah, blah. And everybody thought that they would die as well. And I think Bezos went home one day from work and he said, wow, this is terrible. We can't make money at e-com. We're going to go out of business, right? And I think that night he was hanging out in one of the cut rate airlines that was launching, and there was a news story on it, and where they unbundled everything and said, hey, you can have the lowest, airline ticket you want, but if you want to check a bag, if you want to use the lavatory, whatever, you got to pay. Wasn't that something that tried one time? But I think he plugged the business. He said, oh, retail is the sum of its components, right? So he said, I don't have to make money at selling the thing. I gotta figure out how to unbundle all the rest of the stuff. And luckily cloud grew, and he had made a big bet on that. So that funded a lot of things. And then their search got really good, and media, they'll make 35 billion this year in media. Those are 80 margin dollars, 80. Versus selling stuff, which is 30 margin dollars, for, blended mix, good day. It's a big difference.
Certainly it is.
And then his subscription business, is what is a retailer, right? I mean, a retailer is a place where I get movies from. Yeah, of course. We used to get DVDs from Walmart, right? Why wouldn't I watch? Yeah, Blockbuster. Why wouldn't I watch my movies on Prime? Oh, got it. Okay. I mean, and I think he just looked at all of these pieces, and lucky, good, whatever. We can all debate, how we got there, but I think he realized the future of a retailer is I've got to unbundle the process and figure out how to take costs. And I think that's why they're going after logistics so hard. And if you look at other models, we tend to be very US centric here. 4% of the world's population, we couldn't be wrong, right? JD.com, they have
the Chinese.
Yeah, they have a completely vertical model, right? And I think when you watch those, and when you see the success now of brands like Shein, Shein is putting physical retail now in the United States. Ask any teenage girl here about Shein. It's far and away their favorite, fast fashion brand. Temu, which is an app, part of Pinduoduo. They are thinking very much that way in the fact that I am the complete, vertical of retail, from endpoint to endpoint, and that's a very different thinking than I think most of our models today.
The
Amazon
Chinese model is fascinating, but not so easy to translate into Occidental mores and legislation and so on.
Yeah, sure.
I want to spend the last piece of time together, John, talking about the brands, because different from retailers, although one could argue that a retailer should have a brand, call it Walmart, Tesco, and such, but brands. And so you mentioned Nike previously and Apple, which are two, I would say, standout organizations in terms of the way they have integrated and created their own retail space. But if you look at the avalanche of new technologies, the metaverse and AR, VR, and so on, how do you see brands making it through? And you talk about conversational marketing, you talk about building relationships. Do you feel like brands should own their customer, should own their points of sale? Or if not, how do they provide personalized information and relationship marketing when the material, the data, is actually owned by the retailer?
Yeah, it's a great question, and that's always the friction, right? Is who owns the shopper, right? I think the more connected you can be to the shopper as a brand, the better. Not having someone between you and that person is ultimately how you build a great brand. Apple, where Apple is sold, it is not control, it controls the experience still. If you walk into a Best Buy, it's an Apple controlled experience. In many cases, it's either Apple contracted or third-party contracted Apple employees, not Best Buy employees selling you Apple stuff. I think that's a model. Obviously, every brand cannot do that, but every brand can build. If you look at most consumer brands here today, they are building DTC capability,
direct to consumer.
Every day. Because some consumers, maybe not a lot today, but some consumers want to buy things direct, and they're going to. So I think, when I think about that, one of the brands that I like to look at is Harry's, right? So Harry's razors, and I'm a Harry's user. I've been a Harry's subscriber for, 5 years, right? But I still interact with Harry's. Harry's is in my Harris Teeter, which is a Kroger banner here. So I still interact with them there. I still see them there. I'm still connected to them there. And then I bought a coat the other day for a climb that I'm doing, and I got all this stuff, kind of those rewards after, and it was Harry's. So I think it's thinking about different ways to connect, but ultimately I think Harry's wants to capture me as a new shopper, wherever I may be, and then migrate me to its franchise. And I think you're going to see that brand model happen a lot. Going forward, and brands are going to have to get expertise at that. And there's all kinds of ways that they can do that. Are they the fulfiller? Do they work with, whatever? But ultimately, they want to know what Nike knows about me. Unless I'm buying collectibles, I'm buying all of my Nikes from Nike, right? And I was in the gym today. I don't know if it was this program, but on my watch popped a 20% weekend sale for Nike, which I have, again, they are what I notice about Nike, it is very good at kind of knowing what my purchase pattern is. I buy a new pair of Nikes, functional Nikes every 6 months, right?
Was that through near field communication?
No.
Or was it just a pop-up from
it was
SMS?
It was attentive or one of the sorry. It was just It was a text
So
ad.
they didn't know you were in the gym.
Well, I'm wondering about that, right? Because Apple knows I'm in the gym, right?
Sure.
And Google knows I'm in the gym. Google, I use Google Maps and Apple. I mean, I wondered. It's funny. It was just weird that it popped up. It could have just been a coincidence. But
Yeah.
I'm a
Like
marketer,
those, yeah,
so I'm
funny
like,
things that happen.
I'm like, well, that, and it popped up on my watch, right? And so I'm like, huh. If that was the case, that was pretty well done, you know. It probably was not, but it could be. I mean, all the technology exists to do that.
And so, in terms of all the technologies you mentioned in the book, so many of them, of course, the one that stand out probably the most, as far as my reading of your book is concerned, is voice.
Mhm.
What advice would you have for brand marketers today in looking at the slew of technologies that are out there? Where should they be spending their time and money in terms of developing the tech after you develop the right people, as Macmillan might say?
Are you talking about voice shopping and voice marketing?
Well, yeah, anything. There's so many technologies out there,
Yeah.
drones and AI and AR and
Yeah, I
such.
don't know, but I am fascinated with voice and with spoken interaction, with brands and with marketing. There's a couple cool companies out there. There's a company called Blue AI that does a whole series of integrated voice interaction for Alexa for brands.
Mhm.
And I think as we get as a whole more comfortable talking to our machines and interacting with machines on voice. I mean, voice marketing is something to figure out. It's very much in its infancy today, but it's coming, right? We have an Echo screen product on our kitchen counter, and it recognizes when I come down to make coffee and starts telling me about things going on in the world and products and things like that. So imagine you can imagine a day where I'm like, hey, Alexa, does Nike have any new products I should be aware of or whatever?
But if I'm a brand, there's a startling data point you write about, which is that 90% of voice shopping in the US is owned by Amazon and Google. So as a brand, you're
Mhm.
basically going to have to pay to play, presumably, some
Mhm.
sort of oral search mechanisms. You're going to need to get ramped up on how to do that well. Like whatever it is, vocal search engine optimization.
Yeah, no, it is. There's a wonderful there's a wonderful expert on this topic named Emily Bender. You should have her on your show. You would like, but she has a voice series that she does. So you subscribe to her series, and it has a short marketing daily piece that she does. Yeah, I think today those are the crunch points, but obviously as the space grows, today's Elon's first day at Twitter. So I imagine he'll think about that a little bit, right? That's
Well, he said he wants to become the everywhere platform or the everything platform. Sort of sounded like Amazon.
Yeah, well, I think he's thinking about. I think he's looking at platforms like WhatsApp, or I'm sorry, WeChat, that are kind of ubiquitous.
What
Shopping.
Tencent is anyway. Mhm.
Yeah, shopping. Whatever. So super apps. We don't really have one of those in the United States today. Because we just don't use them that way. China developed a very different pattern than we did.
But I think they're just, I know this point.
Yeah.
One thing they did differently in China is that they start with a credit card.
Yeah. So
Whereas we start everything
different
with an
behavior.
email.
Sure. So it's a different, but again, one of our premises in the book is payment product, media. So everything combined. And that's what you see a lot of things going there, I think. Apple very quietly made huge inroads into becoming the transactional retailer of choice for a lot of folks. So when I was just talking about this with some of the marketers at OSNAP. If I buy a pair of Nikes from an Instagram post, Nike's really good at targeting me. I like a shoe of theirs called the 270, and I have it in 4 or 5 colorways. And when they have interesting colorways, I buy another one because I just like them. They'll target me that with an Instagram ad, and I can buy it directly in the ad. And my payment system in that case is my Apple Pay. And it's a it's a seamless shopper enablement piece because I don't even have to think about it. I mean, I've got a pair of shoes on the way to my house in less than a minute, and I didn't have to do anything, right? And so think about it, in that case, Apple's the transactor, right? And Apple's getting some pretty good data in that stream as well. So
the share of wallet, right?
You saw Facebook's numbers their numbers this week. They lost 20% of their value this week as well when they announced. I think Apple has strategically targeted disintermediating Facebook's ad business. And I think it's doing it by adding the transactional component. To your point, start with a credit card. It's added, anybody who has an iPhone has that capability, with that, if they have Apple Pay set up, which most.
And a few people do have the iPhone. John,
a couple people have an iPhone, yeah.
Yeah, well, we didn't even get into the more apocalyptic version of the economy and how that will also impact different retailers and consumer behaviors. There's a lot to dissect and go on. How can anybody get in touch with you, hire you for your retail savviness, and of course read your book?
Sure. I am Katahdin on almost everything.
Yeah, and Katahdin's, that's a mountain, isn't it? You're a climber, I guess.
Katahdin is a big mountain in Maine. It's the terminus point of the Appalachian Trail, and something I climb once a year, every other year, something like that, when I can get up there and do it. It's just a neat place. It's a place that means a lot to me. But my company is Katahdin Consulting, and I work hand in hand with Ted on lots of projects and various things. Spending a lot of time these days with DTC. I've kind of reawakened my love for product and brand. And to your point, thinking about how do I build relationship with consumers? How do we have a brand voice that's relevant? OSNAP is a fun place to spend some of my time doing that today. But yeah, that's the best way. And I'm on LinkedIn, obviously, or wherever. I'm easy to find.
I will put despite having a name that doesn't exactly stand out, John, I would say you do stand out. So bravo for that. A lot of good SEO, personal branding. Katahdin, we will put all that into the show notes. Thank you so much for coming on. Good luck with everything. And a reminder to everybody, go get Retail Relevancy, How Brands and Retailers Will Connect in a Post-Physical World. Came out end of 2021, so it should still be fresh.
Thank you.
Thanks for having listened to this episode of the Minter Dialogue podcast. If you like the show and would like to support me, please consider a donation on patreon.com/MinterDial. You can also subscribe on your favorite podcast service. And as ever, rating and reviews are the real currency for podcasts. You'll find the show notes with over 2,000 and more blog posts on minterdial.com. Check out my documentary film and 4 books, including my last one, You Lead, How Being Yourself Makes You a Better Leader. And to finish, here's a song I wrote with Stephanie Singer, A Convinced Man.
tucked around me, precipitating the danger to feel free. Trust is the reason, still I won't toe the line. I sit here passively, hope for your respect, anticipating the thrill of your intellect. Maybe I tell myself there's no use in me lying. I'm a convinced man building an urge. I'm a convinced man to live and die submerged. A convinced man in the arms of a woman. I'm a convinced man, challenge my fate. I'm a convinced man, competition's innate. A convinced man in the arms of a woman. Despise revenges and struggle with deceit. Live for the challenge so life's not incomplete. What's wrong with challenge? I know soon we all die. I like the feel of a stranger tucked around me, precipitating the danger to feel free. Trust in my reason and let me show you why. I'm a convinced man practicing my lines. I'm a convinced man here in these confines. A convinced man in the arms of a woman. I'm a convinced man, admit to the test. I'm a convinced man, I'm ready for an arrest. I'm a convinced man in the arms of a woman.
Hi, I'm Brendan Slocum. I'm going to tell you how music can save your life, what it can do for you, and what it has done for me and my guests.
It's such a universal language. You can go any place in the world, and I love that.
Hey, if you got soul, you got soul. I don't care what your color is.
I think music needs to be something that helps us to know what we all have in common.
How music can save your life. Find it wherever you listen to podcasts.